Town Council to order for Thursday, November 21st. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. By way of announcements from me, the upcoming town council meetings, Thursday, December 5th, and Thursday, December 19th, are regular meetings being held. As you recall, November and December, we switched to the first and third Thursday of the month instead of the second and fourth because of Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. Eileen, did you have any other announcements?
I do. The 2019 December property tax bills have been mailed and are due by December 16th. Property owners who have not received their tax bill should contact the tax collector's office for a duplicate bill. Eversource joins other utilities urging caution to customers of sophisticated scammers finding unique ways to exploit people and steal their money, either over the phone, online, or at the front door. Scammers are posing as Eversource employees to get money or personal information for identity theft. Eversource urges everyone who believes that they are a target of improper solicitation to please alert local law enforcement and contact Eversource directly at 1-800-662-7764. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments on the announcements? Yes, Nancy.
I know in the past, I'd like to ask permission from the council. In the past, the MYA has requested town council representation on their boards, and we have not responded. And I would like to volunteer to do that. The reason is I think we all know that they are really attempting to meet the demands that this council has placed on them. Paul, you've given us some very positive feedback as well. And I think we need to demonstrate to them that we recognize their efforts and to provide an opportunity for them to be able to have someone, and I'm not saying every meeting, but to be able to be there frequently enough that I can show as a town council member support to them in what they're trying to do. So I'd like to request that I receive that. I don't want to say it's official.
You're not looking for an appointment or
No.
something like that. You're just offering to be a sort of an informal liaison.
Exactly,
to the
thank
NYA
you.
Council.
I don't want to establish a position per se, but
Does anybody have a concern or issue, Peter?
I don't have a concern or issue. Thank you, Nancy. You're on our PFOA group up at the State House. You're involved in a lot. I just don't want you to be stressed.
that's why I said not every meeting. But I think they have like a monthly meeting. And I think, I'll play it by ear. I don't think I need to stay there when they're scheduling for lacrosse or soccer, those kinds of things. But I could have a conversation with them and at least show that this council is supporting their efforts.
And if you find you need some relief or assistance or someone to sit in, I'd be more than happy to help
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Anybody else? Seen no complaints or denials.
No,
I
thank you,
would
Nancy.
suggest great that you would do that and
Okay.
appreciate your efforts, and please let us know.
So I'll try to
What
find out
comes
who
up?
to contact. Paul, I'll get the
I will-
information from you.
I will email you and the president of the MYA
Perfect.
tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Any other comments on the announcements? Seeing none. We have no recognitions, resignations, or retirements, and/or appointments, public hearings. Comments from the press and public. Wow, went right through that. Anybody wishing to address the council at this point from the press or public, please join me. And Deborah, I understand you were going to come talk to us right now. That'd be awesome if you have the time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Where do people usually stand, right here?
Well, you can sit there, or you can, whichever you want to do is fine.
You can stand up by the microphone if you like.
Okay.
You can sit right here and talk on the phone. Whatever you want.
All right, how about if I stand right here?
Okay.
And I'll just turn that on and that off for you so the microphones are on.
right, thank you very much, and thank you, Chairman Koenig and members of the Town Council. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight with you and Town Manager Eileen Cavanell. Good to meet you tonight. So I am Deborah Pignatelli. I am the Executive Counselor representing Merrimack and 32 other communities in this part of the state. And I bring you good news, I think, tonight. Ever since I joined the Executive Council in 2004, one of my main goals was to help Merrimack with its toll booths. Some of you may remember, if you were on the Town Council between 2005 and 2010, I would be coming to Town Council meetings 3 or 4 times a year with one idea or another that I would like to see the Executive Council pass regarding your tolls. All the time, I never had 2 other votes on the council to anything. Well, during the last month or two, I've been talking about zeroing out the tolls at exit 11. And I now have at least 2 votes on the council that are going to join me. So we have a meeting Monday. The Executive Council is meeting Monday morning at 10 o'clock. This is item 28A on our calendar of about 100 items. And it says, authorized to decrease the rate of tolls at the F.E. Everett Turnpike Exit 11 ramp toll plazas in Merrimack to $0.00 for all vehicles.
That is awesome.
And this takes effect January 1st of this next year. So the DOT people will be out at 10 o'clock, December 31st, taking down the signs. I hope to be there with some bubbly, some sparkling apple cider maybe, who knows, maybe some chocolate or something to greet them. But this has been on my agenda for so long, and really was my part-time job between 2004 and 2010. Now, I can't take credit alone. Nobody gets something like this done on their own, and so I would like to thank my fellow councilors who are joining me in this vote, the Merrimack Town fathers and mothers who have been supportive over many years, the town manager, and the town manager before you, and maybe before that person. Representative Bob LaRue has always been a big supporter of this. Tom, you have always been a big help and a big supporter and a champion for this cause as well, along with the other council members, Nancy and Finley. The Merrimack Toll Talkers, which was a group on the internet that I formed in 2004 and used to communicate with them over the internet about what was going on, and they would give me support and help, so I thank them. The townspeople in Merrimack, who always supported me, and when other people on July 4th parade were throwing candy to the children, what was I throwing? I was throwing tokens. Shannon Chanley for introducing the bill and getting this on everybody's radar this last year, and although that wasn't successful, I think it started people thinking again that this might be a good year to do this. The 4 Merrimack Water Warrior women representatives have been a big help and a big support and a sounding board to me. Rosemary Rung, Wendy Thomas, Nancy Murphy, and Kathy Stack. To some of the DOT employees who couldn't publicly come out but quietly supported me in my efforts all these years. And to Governor Chris Sununu, who, although was late to the cause, is a supporter of this now and is happy to support me in this goal. So that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I have another meeting in Nashua that started at 7 o'clock tonight too. So if you have nothing for me, for once I can bring you good news.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Council.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Counselor.
Are there any other comments from the press and public at this time?
Ben Niles, 11 Fernwood Drive.
Hi, Ben.
I'd like to talk for a few minutes about the Route 3 corridor and the mess we have with the traffic that is a daily event up and down Route 3. I had someone speaking to me that's been, very much a member of Merrimack for many years, and his comments were the quality of life in town is suffering due to the daily congestion in the Route 3 corridor, and he expressed the opinion he thinks it is going to impact property values adversely. And I asked, why is this happening? Is it due to overbuilding along the Route 3 corridor? If not, then what is the cause? Exactly how many hotel units, apartment units, condos and houses have been added and are planned to be added and constructed in the next few years along the corridor? I have the sense we're just overbuilding the corridor. How many cars have been added or will be added in the near future to our already overcrowded Route 3 corridor due to all of this development? How does this impact town residents and businesses already living in proximity to or operating in the Route 3 corridor? And we've heard at other meetings where residents that live in the developments that are accessed off of Route 3, they wait 10 to 20 minutes to get out on Route 3 because of the flow of traffic and the fact that it's bumper to bumper and there's no adequate separation for them to safely enter Route 3. How does it impact the workload of our police department? More people is more police work. How does it impact the emergency response time of our fire, police, and EMTs if we're bumper to bumper from below the tolls up almost to the Bedford line? The NRPC, National Regional Planning Commission, and New Hampshire Department of Transportation thinks it's a great idea to add bike and pedestrian lanes to Route 3. And I would support it if it was totally feasible, but I'm not sure it is. Their proposal is to shrink the travel lanes to 10 feet width. And for the speed zones, the standard is 11 for safe travel. Does 10 feet allow for safe passage of all vehicles? How about trucks and trailer trucks, school buses? In order to slow excessive speeds, there is mention of traffic calming treatments to be added to the roadway. We know the most common ones are called speed bumps. And then they also have what they call, I think, speed platforms. Think of a flat brick surface that's elevated 3 or 4 inches or more above the main travel surface. How will that improve our poor traffic flow and driving experience in our town if we deploy those? If 1 or 2% of residents, and the survey that was done, it's like 1%, bike or walk in town, do we have a cost-benefit analysis? What's this going to cost to go from Nashua Town Line to Bedford Town Line? Got to move utility poles, streetlight poles, streetlight signals, on and on. Is it reasonable to adversely impact 98% of our town residents for the benefit of 1 or 2? Is it time to conduct a comprehensive, up-to-date traffic study of the entire Route 3 corridor? I think it is. Everything I see is 5 years old and older. This proposal is predicated on. Should the town pass a building moratorium for the Route 3 corridor until all of these problems are properly addressed? I personally think it's insane if we have a road that is heavily congested with traffic, and yet we just keep building to add more cars to that congested roadway. It's going to get worse, not better. My daughter does. I don't do social media. My daughter looks at Facebook, and the comments on the young people about Merrimack is the traffic is horrible. They hate the traffic. And they end by saying, I'll never buy a house in Merrimack. That's not good for our reputation. But that's what's out there in the minds of the young people, which are our future buyers. I believe the responsibility of the Merrimack Town Council to take a more active role in our town governance. You are the elected representatives of the Merrimack residents, and you need to be working in our best interest. We all need to be working on how to improve the quality of life in Merrimack. And I just get the sense that it's kind of divided and fragmented, and, you know, it's not, there's not sufficient town-wide input on some of the things that are being done by the various boards. And that's why I decided to come forward and address the full town council tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks. Is there anybody else wishing to address the council during the comments from press and public? Seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have recognitions, resignations, or retirements, or appointments, or public hearings scheduled for tonight. Legislative updates from state reps. Would invite all of the state reps to come forward at this time that would like to address us. Huh? Well, then we can borrow chairs, or we can sit at the bench. If you'd like to address us, if you can all come at least to the front here, so we're all. There you go, Janine.
Want me to go first? Sure. Okay. Hi, I'm Wendy Thomas, State Rep for Merrimack. I just wanted, the LSRs have closed, so I wanted to go over the LSRs that I've entered. It's going to be a busy year. The first one is I've got a bill in to, it was a local physician asked me to put this in. Right now, the insurance companies only pay for 28 days of IV therapy if you have a tick-borne illness. And so this bill would allow, would mandate that insurance companies have to pay for more than 28 days. They have to pay for what the physician thinks is appropriate. I have another bill in requiring, it complements the bill that Representative Stack put in last year. If you have rental property, if somebody signs a lease for any kind of rental property, and this is going to include Airbnbs, you have to see the water quality report upon signing the lease. I have another bill for people who are legally in the therapeutic cannabis program in New Hampshire, that if they're in non-essential jobs, they cannot be fired if they have a positive drug test. This doesn't protect them if they're inebriated at work. This is if they're legally following the program. So that's going to be an interesting one. I have a bill that was asked, someone in town whose son suffers with this condition asked me to put a bill in proclaiming October 9th as PANDAS/Pan Awareness Day. PANDAS is Pediatric Autoimmune Neurological Disorder Associated with Strep. It's a very severe condition that some children are getting. And the fact that everybody, when I talk about this bill, they're asking me why I put in a bill about cute little bears is the reason why we need an awareness day on this one. And recently I attended a conference on PANDAS, and it was just amazing. Oh, sorry. Another bill that I'm putting in is to allow therapeutic dispensaries to sell products containing third-party CBD oil and isolates. The therapeutic program has blossomed into, I think we have about 8,000 patients, and a lot of the patients want CBD products as opposed to THC products, and they can't keep up with the demand. The way the bill is written right now, they have to source everything in-state, and they have to grow their own product. So they're finding, God bless you, yes, they're finding that they need some more CBD products.
Wendy?
Yes.
I appreciate that you're going through this whole list of bills, but it doesn't sound like there are things that the town council needs to act on, and while they do
Well,
appreciate the town of Merrimack, Maybe you could send us your list of bills that
Oh,
you
I can
put
do
in?
that. I can certainly do that if you'd like. Let me just go through. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, so the one that is going to affect the town is the one Medicaid to school. I talked about it last time. I've withdrawn my bill, and I'm a co-sponsor on the bill that Senator Khan is putting in. So he's the one that's going to be putting that one in. And just with regards to Merrimack, last night we had the DHHS meeting for PFAS, and Jonathan Ali, who is the NHDES toxicologist, when someone asked him if he lived in the town of Merrimack, would he drink the water, and he said no. And he was talking about public water, which brings me to another point in that I've been contacted by St. Gobain for the Community Advisory Council, and one of the asks that I'm going to bring to the table is for St. Gobain to provide the entire town with bottled water. Because if we have the state toxicologist saying that he would not drink the public water, then the residents of Merrimack should not be drinking it as well. And then lastly, I attended a Women in Government conference in Washington, D.C. last week. I'm the state director for Women in Government for New Hampshire. We had 6 representatives from New Hampshire, so it was very well attended by New Hampshire women.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Murphy, also state rep. I was actually going to say the same thing about Dr. Ali that Wendy said, but it certainly bears repeating the importance of that statement last night, that finally we're having some actual real direction, very clear, definitive direction from DHHS. I wanted to thank everybody that attended. It was a great opportunity, and we were seeing people from other towns, Londonderry, we're seeing more participation from surrounding towns that are just becoming aware that they too are impacted. So I was grateful for that, and anticipate some more work with DHHS. So thank you.
Great. Thanks.
I actually asked the toxicologist if he would drink the water because he said he wouldn't drink it if it was above the standards. And there was talking in the back, so we didn't hear in the back row whether he meant 12 or 70 because that was the previous standard. And he said 12. I didn't think to ask him would he drink tap water if it didn't have anything in it, because I never drink tap water because I've always been afraid of it. I grew up in California where you have good reason to be afraid of tap water. But what I didn't know was he also didn't recommend cooking with it, which I still do because I have been all along. I also asked him a question about bottled water, and I was talking about it with a friend of mine today because she's heard this too, that the plastic water bottles, if they get too hot or if you put them in the freezer, that chemicals could from the plastic could leach into the water. And they had no answer for me, so no matter what we do, I think there's always going to be something because we live in a toxic world. I just have one bill I wanted to tell you about because it's HB 712, and it's going to be it's an income tax. But they call it a tax on wages, so it doesn't sound so bad. But that did pass the Finance Committee. It'll come to the House for a full vote. And it does affect Merrimack. I heard what you said last time I was here. And I think all the bills that we work on in Concord do affect Merrimack because Merrimack is in the state of New Hampshire, and we all have to pay taxes.
Yeah, I acknowledge that, but what I'm trying to do is get us to focus a little bit more on things the town council can react to or can help with or do something with. Things like that you guys are dealing with in the state level, we really appreciate you doing that. And it does obviously impact and benefit Merrimack, but if we're going to come here and go through each and every one of the 700 and something LSRs that are there because they impact the state, then we're going to be here all night. And we'd rather focus on things the town council can have some kind of a reaction to or be supportive of or give guidance on, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. Peter.
And to give example, Representative Barry last year came to us about utilities tax that was directly going to affect our tax base, and that was appreciated that he did that. It's something like that. That's just a for example type situation is really what we're looking for. And while I'm here, I just want to thank Representative Rung for sending us the legislative service request list. And it was good. It was nice of us to touch base on it so that we can reach out to each one of you and say, hey, what about this? So.
I gave you a hand copy of that
that was okay.
a couple of meetings
Thank
ago.
you as well,
Okay. Awesome.
Actually, I just had one more thing to add. I sit on the Protecting Unprotected Water Sources Committee. Shannon Chanley is the chair. Senator Chanley is the chair. And this is what I was talking about before with the bowling alley developments near the lakes. And we're tasked with coming up with money to protect our state's water. And so what we're looking at now is maybe a 50 cents a month charge on water. And I know that's going to be problematic for the town because I know the water bills have gone up. They were talking about a $5 a month, and I said, absolutely not, we can't do that, not in Merrimack. So 50 cents a month, and then we'd have to develop guidelines on how that money could be spent for infrastructure, filtration, protection of water supplies. So we're at the very beginning. This is a year-long committee. So, but we're just heading that way.
And Wendy, that's a dedicated fund for that 50 cents,
It's-
totally dedicated to groundwater protection, source water development, water quality.
It would be dedicated, but
Acquisitions.
it's not a state fund. It would be owned by the water companies.
Okay,
But it would be dedicated by we'd have very strict uses on how
so
it could be
MPD,
used.
Pennachuck, Concord Water.
Correct.
Hawk, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much, I appreciate it. Brings us to the town manager's report.
Sorry. I wanted to take this opportunity to commend Kristen Wardner in my office. She, as you know, she puts together the town report for us. She collects all of your information and she puts it together in an understandable way and attractive. So what she has come up with is that she has reached out to the middle school and the high school to help design the cover for the town report for this year. So the winner will be published as a permanent part of Merrimack history. So I think that's a really nice thing for Kristen to do, a nice initiative on her part. Thank you. That's it.
Well, that was quick, thank you. Any comments or questions for the town manager's report? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda. The first being consideration of changes to Chapter 178 taxation, dealing with the optional disabled veterans credit, and the other is changes to Chapter 178 taxation, dealing with the solar exemption.
Move the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Consent agenda is moved. Do we have a second? Seconded by Finley. Any comments or questions, or is that even a debatable?
It's
Not
non-debatable.
We
It's on the
didn't pull it
consent.
off the consent agenda,
Correct.
so we'll just vote on it straight up. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you very much. Those that came for that, that's all we needed to do.
Make sure they understand that it's now a done deal.
Yeah, so now the ordinance is officially changed for both of those issues, for the optional veterans disability credit, and for the solar exemption that's now in place for Merrimack. Okay?
So it's done.
Yes, sir?
Can you explain a little bit on what you're elaborating?
What this
Explain a little
means,
bit on what you're
what it means.
elaborating.
What I'm elaborating, the optional property tax credit for veterans that are totally disabled was at $2,000 a year, and we just raised it to $4,000 a year, so that you can apply for that. They have to apply for that? or-
No, it's automatic for
It's
the
automatically
49
for-
that
So if you're
are-
already on that disability taxation deferment, then it'll just bump up to 4,000 this coming year.
Thank you for your explanation.
The other one.
Right
it's-
away or not?
It's
until April?
effective April 1st,
Effective your April
2020.
1st tax rate, not today's tax rate, but the tax rate that'll be set as of April 1st. And the other one is the solar exemption was put in place. We've been talking about for the last 3 meetings, which is an amount of, the exemption, once you apply for it, is $25,000, is up to $25,000 against the total assessment against your house. And that is something you would have to apply for before April 1st of next year, plus or minus 2 weeks. And it would stay with the house as long as you own it. Somebody who purchased the house would have to reapply in their name. Is that right? That's right. Okay? Thank you very much. That brings us into old business, where we're looking for a Wasserman Park facilities update from Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. Town Council to be presented with an update on the facilities at Wasserman Park. Hi, Eileen.
This is one of the items that you had on your list of goals to achieve this year, was to have Matt take a comprehensive look at all the buildings and, look toward the future to see what may become of them and those that may not be of any particular value. So he's done a really nice job here.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight.
Good to have you here, Matt, anytime.
Thank you. I was thinking about it today. So next month will mark 6 years since I started here.
Is that right? Holy
Well, January 1st officially will be 6 years. 6 years completed. And it has been
Very quick
an
6
interesting
years.
6 years, and and so I want to start out tonight and just talk about where we've been. When I got here 6 years ago, we were in pretty rough shape. The pictures I've got here on the screen are what some of the buildings in Wasserman Park look like. We've got cabins that are, paint's peeling. We've got graffiti all over the walls. The summer camp using these buildings had gone through several years of kind of declining enrollment. And so just to give you an idea as a memory of what things looked like, and I remember coming in, interviewing in the fall, but it was early winter, and didn't really see things until March or April, and it's like, whoa, we got to do, So I knew I had my hands full right away, but and here's a couple more. We've got buildings with holes in roofs, and just falling down structures, and those kinds of things. And one of the things that you guys had asked me to do back then was to develop an initial 5-year plan to kind of rank and begin addressing some of our most urgent needs. Over the last 6 years, we've done a lot. And so what I've done quickly here is just kind of listed out all the kind of major projects that we've done. Some were tax dollars, some were within department budget, some were Boy Scout and Girl Scout projects. In 2014 and 15, there was 15 major projects. In 16 and 17, we had 13 major projects. In 18 and 19, we had 12 major projects. Now, in fall of 2016, one of the things that we had started doing was we had made a lot of improvements to the function hall itself, so that we put in a new heating system, new water line. We did put in the sprinklers, which allowed us to begin renting out the building. Now that first year, we kind of started middle of the year, and we only brought in about $1,300. The second year, we jumped up to $2,500 in revenue. Third year, we jumped up to just over $6,100 in revenues. And year to date for this current year, we're already over $6,500 in rental, and we're only at the 6-month point here. So it's really been taking off. People are, the word's been spreading, and so we're getting obviously a lot more interest in those kinds of things. Now, again, back in 2004, the camp had gone through kind of a steady, 5 or 6 years where enrollments had gone down every single year. This past summer, we had our highest enrollment ever. And we sold out 8 out of the 9 weeks. The only week we didn't sell was 4th of July, which is always low because it's a weird week with the holiday. So we're heading in the right direction. Like I said, we've done a lot in 6 years. And we're going to talk about the beach project in the next agenda item when we have Dawn come up as well. But I want to kind of talk about some of our kind of pending issues. Now, right now in Wasserman Park, we have a total of 19 buildings, which are in fair to good condition depending on the building. Obviously, the more permanent buildings like my office and the function hall are in much better shape than some of the seasonal cabins that only get used for 8 weeks out of the summer. Now, of those 19 buildings, 7 of them are the old sleeping cabins from when it was the private Camp Natticook. And now back before I got here, the department used to run an overnight there every 2 weeks. They'd sleep in the cabins, and they discontinued that practice before I got here. But nowadays, those cabins, those 7 cabins, mostly get used as, you know, a place for the campers to dump their backpacks. They might change for swimming, rainy day space, some, although we've seen a decrease in that as we've fixed up some of our other buildings like the function hall. Now, this past summer, I sat down with my staff and we kind of took a hard look at all the buildings. We talked about the conditions, how we're using them, you know, which ones are kind of absolutely critical and essential versus the ones that, you know, are nice to have, but, you know, really don't do a whole lot for us, you know. You know, we have right now on average between 150, 175 people a day come at camp. And what we found in those older sleeping cabins, we're using far less than even 3 or 4 years ago, you know. And even though our enrollments have gone up, and again, we've obviously used the theater more, we use the function hall more, we use the arts and crafts building a whole lot more because it was one of the buildings that we repaired a couple of years ago. And so of those 7 sleeping cabins, 3 of them are really in pretty tough shape. And I'll show you a close-up picture in just a second here. You know, we, in the summer, right now I have a part-time year-round maintenance person at 18 hours a week, and then I have a seasonal employee for 12 weeks in the summer helping, and we do what we can. But it's a tough nut to crack with some of these older buildings that we just don't seem to make a whole lot of headway with them because they just constant attention. Most of these buildings are made with kind of T111 siding, which is just, they rot and, you know, whatnot. So back right before the council had their retreat last June, you had asked Rick Jones from the building department to come out and inspect all the buildings and to look at everything and kind of compare it to that Turner report that was done. That must be 10 years ago now, something like that. In our discussions and from walking around and looking at all the buildings, there was 2 buildings in particular, cabin 1-2 and cabin 5-6, which I've circled in green here on this map, that he had concerns with the college ties that are holding up the roof structure. And so he asked us not to use the buildings and then until we could get more evaluation done on them. These 2 buildings in particular are the worst ones in the park. The one, the circle to the right, it actually still has the original beds in it from Camp Natticook, and at some point in time they nailed the beds to the floor. So if I rip the beds out, then I have a gap in the floor. We actually had the same thing in cabin 11, which is the red one at the top of the screen, which we had a Girl Scout project fix a year or 2 ago, but it's still in rough shape. So aside from cabin 1-2 and 5-6, you know, these 2 buildings are not ADA accessible. They're going to need roofs in the next year or 2 or 3. Cabin 5-6 actually there's a big pine tree right in front of the cabin, and it's actually there's a big stone stairs, and it's actually causing the stairs to be pushed out of place from the root system. So, you know, they're just in rough shape. You know, like I said, we've done what we can to them, but at this point, our recommendation is to take down basically these 4 buildings marked in red. It's the 2 cabins with the circles on them, the red one that's above it that doesn't have a circle on it because, again, it's beat up and we've done what we can with it, but we're just struggling to keep up with it. And then there's a little nature hut, which is kind of the woods have kind of grown around the hut, and we haven't used it in probably 10 years now, and it's kind of falling over anyway. So, back in 2014, we had, when I first got here, we had a number of kind of condemned buildings on the property, and that opened us up to a lot of vandalism issues and that kind of things, because buildings were just falling apart. People could get in them easily, that type of thing. So going back to cabin 1-2 and cabin 5-6, this is the issue that the building inspector is concerned of, is the collar ties are actually pulling apart by themselves. So they're, at some point, he's like, if you got a heavy snow load, or you got a heavy, just even a major, like a microburst, it could pull the roof down. So we didn't use the building this year, but my concern is I don't want to just leave it sitting there and continuing to rot away. So I had put in one of my CIP projects in the budget this year is the demolition of these 3 buildings. It is about $24,000. Whoops.
Well, now that Matt's touched on that, I just wanted to.
Go ahead.
Because I'm listening. Matt, you put in for demo work, and I've seen these cabins. Is this something that the town can do itself? Basically knock them over with a front end loader or something, and then, haul them out with our 10-wheelers or something?
Go ahead.
In years past, I have a private contractor come in with an excavator. They crush the building, and then we utilize solid waste on a Monday, load the trucks, and take it out ourselves. So really all we're paying for with the contractor is borrowing his excavator to crush it up into smaller pieces and load the truck for us. And then solid waste, we pay the tipping fee for it. So
Yeah, I
the
just didn't know
the costs are low for it. We don't have the equipment, the excavator. We don't have an excavator on site. It's a little bit too big of a job for a backhoe to load. And the way they do it, they got to crush it up so that it goes into the back of the 10-wheel, not the 10-wheel dump trucks, but
Well, at least we're using some
tractor
of our
trailer.
services too to defray
Yeah.
the cost, that's all.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Matt.
That's okay. Lost my train of thought. So, again, our thought at this point is to take these buildings down and, kind of eliminate the future hazard of more deteriorating buildings, and again, that negative image of what things looked like 6 years ago, versus my guess is if we were to want to fix them just back to kind of serviceable conditions, we'd be looking at more like $40,000. So at this point, I hate taking down buildings, and I know Paul does too, but at this point, I think that's where we're at with these kind of buildings. Questions on that piece before I move on to kind of the other project that I have in this year?
So obviously, repairing them would be expensive. You're saying also, without saying it, that you really don't have a need for this particular space?
Yeah, and that's the other piece, and I think, I think you had in your packets kind of the write-up that I had done of kind of what we need and the buildings that are, here's the critical buildings, here's the nice to have, and then there's these other ones that are kind of like, okay, if we could fix them, great, but at this point, I don't think it's worth even fixing them.
Okay, so they don't really fit your mission as
No.
you understand it and going forward, and I think you've been doing a fantastic
Thank
job
you.
in defining the mission and moving it forward, so.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions at this point? Barbara?
So Matt, when are you planning demolition?
Well, right now, this is in this current upcoming year's CIP, so it would be, we wouldn't have money till July 1, so it'd be next fall probably.
Paul?
I have another building that's due to be knocked down this year. When I talk to the contractor, I'm going to see what we can do. So, best case scenario this year, worst case scenario next fall.
Just a
Peter?
follow-up question. When we take down these structures, does that lower our insurance rate, our coverage at all? When we take down?
Not really. What we do is we take them down and they just don't cover a building, so to speak. The way the insurance rates work are based on wages, based on a bunch of different avenues, and small portion of that is value of buildings. And as you can see, these buildings aren't, Taj Mahal, kind of on the rates. I think they're valued at maybe 10,000 at most. So it's not lowering our rate significantly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the other project that I have in, for this next budget cycle is the tennis courts at Wasserman Park. We have 7 courts here. They are the only official courts in town now. And what we've had the last few years is cracks appearing everywhere. Now, we've been patching them for a couple of years now, but at the, generally you're supposed to kind of resurface the courts every 10 years or so. And it's been at least 15 from what I can tell from the records. So that's the other project that I have on here is just, like I said, we've patched them, which is just a stopgap. But we don't want to have happen here what happened to O'Gara Drive.
Well, that would be hard to do that.
Eileen?
Yeah, well,
Matt, do they get a lot of use?
they do. They
They
are
do?
used
Nice.
7 days a week. The high school team plays there as well. But
Good.
yeah, they are used constantly.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And is that in your CIP?
That
or
is in my
your-
CAP as well for
Okay.
this year. So those are our kind of biggest immediate issues. In that report that I had provided to you, it kind of, or in the CIP, if the future years tabs obviously has kind of what's next. 2 years from now, we're going to be looking at the docks. Our docks are 28 years old. We are looking at the idea of changing the configuration, which will, to replace what we have now is about $40,000. I'm looking at changing our configuration of our docks, which would cut the cost in about half, just to save some money. The other two for 2 years from now is my office, first of all, is not ADA accessible, and since it is a town building and a public office, it really should be. My office will also need a roof in the next 2 years, and so that we're hoping to do in 2 years from now. And then at the same time, we have the same issue with the camp office in terms of the ADA access ramp. I see, sorry.
Peter, go ahead. Sorry.
Matt, I'm looking at the function hall basement restoration at $70,000. Right now, it's vacant down there, right?
It is.
And I'm looking at, your office being ADA accessible.
Mhm.
Is the basement accessible?
It is not currently.
We're gonna invest all this money, and we haven't used that basement in years.
Right.
Would it be feasible to move your office? That might even create more space for you in the basement of that building.
It might. One of the nice things about where my office is now is it's easy to find and
Yeah.
kind of centrally, you come in and it's right there.
Yeah.
Versus down lower in the park might make, people finding us difficult. So the basement in 3 years from now, it's, there was a flood 10 so years ago, but basically there's framing there, and now that's all that's left. So it's and it just kind of sits vacant, and right now when we rent out upstairs, they get the whole floor because there's no way to kind of subdivide the rooms because the bathrooms are in the back, and so if you're in the front, you'd have to go through the other group to go. And so my thought with the function hall basement would be to turn it into a series of kind of meeting or activity rooms so that we could have more than one thing going on in the building at a time. We could, yes, put our office down there. Again,
That's
it would not be my first choice. Again, the visibility. But again, one of the things we will have to do is to either run a ramp down the side of the building, or either like an elevator from the front entry down, or something, which would, I think the ramp is going to be cheaper, but than like a lift, but again, if I've got all these framed rooms out, and so it's sheetrock, it's ceiling tiles, it's floor, put a bathroom down there, and then the ramp, so I think it's doable. And then the nice thing about that is, again, the basement has heat, has sprinklers and all that, versus those individual cabins in the park which don't. It makes, we could do even more with that building, and kind of less, again, continuing to invest in some of these 50-year-old buildings, down the road. And then the last one on the list in the next few years is cabin 3, 4, 12, and the boathouse will also need roofs. We had all of our roofs evaluated this year, which is why it's like, okay, I got 2 years on this one, I got 3 years on this one, based on what the contractor told us. So that is kind of where we are, going back 6 years and then looking ahead, to 2023, of kind of, here's our big needs. But we've done quite a bit. It'll probably never be done, but we've certainly made a lot of improvements. We've certainly expanded programs. I think when I got here, we were doing 25 programs a year, and I think we're somewhere around 250 right now. So we're doing
That's
pretty
within
good.
Parks and Rec. not
Within Parks and
necessarily
Rec,
at
yeah.
Wasserman, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I just one more.
Go ahead.
And it's not on here.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think you're doing a fantastic job, by the way. I just wanted to, the Wasserman Park, the whole issue we had, we took down the trees, now we've got a stump and tree roots, and we're dealing with shoreline. Beautiful, thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
That's why I skipped it, because I knew it was next.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, to pick pile on everybody else, thank you for what you do down at PNR. Appreciate it, seriously. Great work, great programming, and I really appreciate it. On average, how many people visit the Parks and Rec office?
In the summer, it's obviously 10 times what it is this time of year. Right this time of year, it might be a couple of people, a day at most. But in the summer, people are in there constantly. I don't have a specific head count, but
But are they driving directly to your office, or are they looking for the day camp?
they're driving directly to my office. And that would be one of the challenges of us moving to the function hall is camp operations. So if people are coming in trying to come to me versus now they're stuck in the traffic for people going to camp or to the function hall, or, it's gonna add congestion. We'd have to, right now, we do our drop off and pick up for camp at the function hall. They actually drive down the hill and then go back out the other way. So that might create some challenges for us that would be another challenge for us if we were down there.
And then the other flip of the coin, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I could have sworn a couple of years ago that in the wintertime, you're only operating on the first floor, that you actually do not heat the upper floors to that facility, that you actually shut that down?
So my office, we heat the main floor, which is where the office is. The basement, we do not heat. There used to be garage doors down there, but there was a furnace, which we haven't used in years. But when we moved, we used to store our maintenance gators in that basement, and we've since moved those to another location, and we took the barn doors, sealed it in, turned it into a solid wall, so I actually don't have to heat the space down there. It stays above 50 degrees even in dead of winter. So we haven't had any issues down there, but no, we do not heat it down there.
And then the last question is, right where the volleyball netting is, diagonally across from the day camp is the old men's and ladies' room.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a vision for that, or is that, because to me is not just an eyesore, I also think it's a safety hazard as well.
That building has been closed for a couple of years. We actually found out last year that it had multiple roof leaks. There was one day I happened to go in there and I was like, oh, there's power in here. I wonder if that works. I went to turn on the panel and it started sparking. And hey, turn it off, So we don't use that building anymore. It is empty. The power's been cut from the building. Our plan is to take that down as well, which we're looking to do. I've talked to Paul about trying to do that this year within our existing budget.
Okay. Okay,
that the
thank you,
pool
Matt.
house?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The pool house, yes.
The pool house, yeah. Go ahead.
I have to make a trip to the park, because for me, raising a bunch of structures is something I put the pause button on, because there's a character about Wasserman Park that I would hate to completely lose, although it would be inevitable at some point in time, I'm sure. But So I'm not jumping on ripping buildings completely down yet until I go take a look, because I'm a visual guy.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your thoughts on your office. I would agree that leaving it up there makes better sense for all the reasons that you alluded to,
Mhm.
in particular, but, so.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, but. But the buildings that are falling down need to come down, because we
Well, I
can't
know.
afford to
No,
build
no,
them
and
back up.
I know there's a point of no return, but again, for me, I have to take a peek and
All right,
get my bearings.
sounds fair. Any other questions or comments? Lon?
Matt updated the Parks and Rec Committee just yesterday evening, and they were very supportive of his thoughts and ideas that he has expressed through this report tonight, and further, I think we're going to even hear more. I defer to Pete. I know he was over there as a council rep for a while with that committee, and I commend Matt. He keeps the committee well informed. He's got the answer to almost every question. If he doesn't have an answer, at least he's been thinking about it. And he does a great job. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Pete?
One last thing, and I guess it's like, I agree. Watson Park is a great place.
Wasserman?
And I want to see, Wasserman, Watson's too good. Watson's well. But I guess I want to see us investing in the docks and so forth. And but I'm looking and I'm hearing Matt say the basement isn't good enough for an office. But then I'm hearing that we possibly want to invest $70,000 into meeting rooms down there. So we're still gonna have to be ADA accessible and so forth.
Yep.
Maybe that space isn't really geared up to be meeting rooms as well. Maybe it's geared up to be storage for some of the parks and rec equipment and so forth, as opposed to investing that $70,000. So, and this is where it was just kind of a conflict in what I'm hearing, that's all. You know, and I know, Matt's done a great job with what he has there and stuff, so, but it's just, that's kind of jumped out at me in this conversation, so.
Nancy?
May I?
Yes.
Just to address your issue, Pete, I think, first of all, it's a future discussion. But the immediate response is, one of the things that's been lacking in this town is meeting space.
Mhm.
In order for the community to have places, they utilize the rooms here. So when it was brought up, I'm going, oh, now that's interesting. That really would be useful for those community groups that want to be able to meet. And that's a wonderful opportunity. So that's just my thought. We'll discuss more in the future.
Okay. Do you have anything else, or?
Not on
we
this,
clean
no.
on this one? Any other comments for Matt at this point? Barb?
Yeah, I would just say that when we get around to having that conversation about the meeting rooms downstairs,
Mhm.
what would also be helpful is what you think the projected income would be
Mhm.
if we actually had that space
Mhm.
downstairs. So, thanks.
Yep, we're a couple of years from that, but yeah.
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 Okay. Great. Moving right along. Bringing us to the next discussion, which is the Wasserman Park beachfront update. Town council will be presented with an update on the status of the Wasserman Park beachfront. Come on up, Don.
Where's your, did you save it? This one?
What's this?
That's additional information.
Yep, I'm going. Do you want to hear it? Sit here or?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wasserman Park, the beach.
The
Yes, I have been working on it. The trees in question are the ones.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? If the media guy, if there's any chance to get this back monitor turned on, because it's not receiving signals. Huh? the cable, but no, it's not,
No, it's not
I mean, since we're getting it up here, it's not the computer.
No. No. It's on the flash drive, yes.
Sure. You think it's the, how can it be the computer if it's showing up here? I have no. I'll get it. Thought I knew electronics better than that. You know,
Give me a sec.
So I'm changing the input. It's the cord is an old one and it doesn't work with the TV back there. The HDMI does though. That's the only one that does work with the TV back there. So yeah. Yep. Yeah. No problem.
I have an old laptop, so it doesn't, no. It's good. We don't use it very often, so.
I need a new one too. I don't have one.
It's hot in here.
That's only on this screen, you should see the other one.
Clip it.
Which one is it?
Bottom
Wasserman
one.
Park?
Yep.
Slideshow from the beginning.
Yay.
There you go.
All right. Anyway, the 4 trees in question that you've been asking about are those 4 trees right there. I could pushed it away. The second part of your question was the roots. So as you can see, these roots in here are causing a hazard. They come out about 30 feet from the tree in all directions. This is on the other side, and they come all the way out. And what Matt's had to do is to put a split rail fence up to try to keep people from going because it is a hazard. This is looking from the pond looking up. So you can see there's quite an elevation change in there. So just to cover them and to do what we called Perch Beach, which I did you pass out? I just gave you something for your reading pleasure. In order to do anything along this beach, we need to do what's called a perch beach. So we need to create some retaining wall, put some sand in the back, and then create another retaining wall, and to also do drainage and that type of thing behind. There's a large, about 6 feet elevation change, so it's not going to work easily without taking out these roots. So I went to the law. Actually, I started with the regulations. So it says removal of dead, diseased, or unsafe vegetation. Well, unsafe trees. And it said you may remove them if you can include the scoring, if they are not included in the scoring. If they are included, if they are alive and not considered diseased, then I have to include them within the scoring. And there's no way we're going to be able to take them out if they're included. But it's a scoring system that is along a shoreland. So for every 50-foot block, you get so many points for every tree within there. Now, this beach area is about 200 feet long. So these trees are about in the middle, and if I take them out, there's nothing else around, so these are the only points, and these trees would be worth 60 points. In order to put them in, to replace them would be a huge amount. You'd have to do a lot of seedlings, a lot of ground cover and that type thing. It's not impossible, but it's going to be expensive. So I'm going on the assumption that these are unsafe at this point. But the law and the regulation says to leave all the stumps intact in accordance with RSA 483-B:9. So when I go and look at that, which is the minimum shoreline standards, it says rocks and stumps and their roots shall be left intact in the ground unless removal is specifically approved by the department pursuant to, and what applies to us would be RSA 483-B:11, number 2. You wanted the laws, you wanted to know what's behind all of this, so this is what's behind. This is shoreland protection. Shoreland protection, yes. We have, it's DES, shoreland, and DES wetlands. So those are the two applications that we have to apply for in order to do this. So 483-B:11, which is our exception, is non-conforming structures. So for the purpose of this section, a proposal that is more nearly conforming means alteration of the location or size of the existing footprints or redevelopment of the existing conditions of the property such that the structures or the property are brought into greater conformity with the design standards of this chapter, which we can do by enhancing the stormwater management, adding infiltration areas, and some landscaping. So what my plan is, and I also put the definition of what they called an unsafe tree, means a tree that is structural defect and poses an immediate hazard to structures or personal property or safety. And again, if we look at these trees, their roots are all up and exposed. They don't look really healthy to me, but I would get an opinion on them. I think they could be considered unsafe. To my mind, they are unsafe, and the roots are definitely unsafe because they are a hazard to the public. We also...
Dawn, to your knowledge, how many people, have we had any claims regarding these roots and people getting hurt on them?
I asked Matt that yesterday, no.
We haven't had any claims, but we get stubbed toes and that kind of thing all the time.
I'm aware of one, a knee injury.
Okay.
So,
No, it wasn't to me. But I'm aware of one person who hurt their knee badly.
So in looking at the grades...
That's fine.
And
I guess I'm emphasizing, I think it's a safety issue.
yes, I do
And I
too.
think you do too, thank you.
And I'm going to push that way towards DES. My goal is to get the application in December, hopefully. I've got 2 other applications I'm also working on. And I'd like to get these in so that we could have, hopefully in the spring, be able to construct this. I would like to, in the next few weeks, be able to go up and to talk to DES before I actually submit the application and talk to all that are involved with this and see if I can get them on the same page. One thing these shoreline laws are made for are more for the private person and creating your private beach. This is a public beach. This has been in the town since 1994. Not a whole lot has been done to this area since then. I think part of this, the dock part, was probably used when it was a camp. I have a plan in 1994 that added on another 100 feet to the, I guess it's the north, or to the left of those trees, adding more beach area. So I'm going to consider the entire beach area the whole 200 feet, although we're only going to work in the first 100 or 150 feet, whatever that figure comes up. and deal with the rest of it, you know, at a later time, but make it known that we're going to be doing the docks in a couple of years, that we're going to be improving that, but we haven't been making the improvements since 1994. The other thing I found through my research that I've been doing is in 2012, the state did come down and made a whole series of recommendations for erosion control just above this area feeding down into the lake. I don't know how much of that was done, so I'm going to look at that and utilize some of their recommendations within this, and that should satisfy all of their requirements that I had pointed out.
Barbara?
I'm a tree person, so I always look at removing trees as the last, resort, action of resort. Is it possible to, and they may ask you this up there, so it maybe you've thought of it already, is it possible to bury those roots, to put, sand or dirt on top of them so that the safety factor is minimized? And then secondly, are you planning planting of shrubbery or anything else to, not only for erosion control, but, also to lessen the impact of pulling down a tree of that size and the amount of, CO2 that it disperses, et cetera?
That was my first point, was that in order to replace those trees, it would be a significant amount. And I can't make up the points. I know I can't. It would cost too much. The original plan that we had did not include a lot of landscaping, but it includes some erosion control behind all of these retaining walls that will be back. Maybe some leaching or something, infiltration. We need to do some infiltration. And when I saw the report, I just found the report recently in some old storage files in the men's bathroom back, but anyway, from way back when.
Yeah.
So I did
Now I
find them,
mean.
and I haven't gone through them fully in depth. I mean, it was about a 6-page report that was done, and I don't know if it was ever addressed because I have nothing else with it. If you look at the height difference, to answer your filling question, you can't without taking the roots out. If we took out part of those roots, it would probably surely kill those trees. And the other thought I've been rolling around is, can we put some type of platform over it? Well, the law says it should be pervious, so it should have the moisture going through it. So if I put some type of deck or concrete, it's not going to meet the regulation.
Well, decking would allow water to go through, but
And they do not call it, no,
the slots between the boards is not considered pervious?
no.
Where's that water gonna go?
It goes off, and it becomes
No, it
runoff.
doesn't. Okay. Finley, did you have a question?
But no, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Yeah, 10 yards. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a limit on.
So
fill you
it
bring.
throws us into the next application anyway, so it doesn't matter, we're there.
So, yes, so the,
Is there any more questions
No,
at
I'm
this
good.
point? No. So go.
It's not an easy, yes, I'm going to fight. After looking at the roots today and seeing them again, because it had been a couple years, and taking more photos today, it was like they've definitely become more exposed, and it's become more of an issue.
Left on their own, they'll continue to be more exposed because they're on the side of the hill that feeds down to the lake, so there'll be erosion around them
Correct.
and stuff like that.
And if you
sure.
look at the other pine trees that are just across the access drive that's there, or partially there, there are a few roots exposed, but they're nothing like what this is. So it's causing a problem, anyway.
Granted, I wouldn't argue at all that it is causing a problem. The question is only, is there a way to do something to solve the problem and save the trees? And you're telling me there's not, and it's it almost makes us want to have to build some shelter or some shade or something down there along with the perch beach in order to be able to have something to replace the trees that people can sit under and not bake while their kids are swimming or something like that, but,
That could be a future Boy Scout or Girl Scout.
yeah,
project.
pergolas or something down there, so, you know.
So your plan is to convince DES and the shoreland guys and the wetland guys that it's a hazard, so that we do have to remove them. Otherwise, if we can only take them down and have to leave the roots, we may as well leave them up.
Right.
So,
So we'll see what they have to say. I mean, I can only try. I have no guarantee with that. Thanks.
Well, yes, and we're behind you. As much as I want to save these trees, I want to do what's going to make this work the best for Merrimack. And so if the trees just aren't going to make it because the difficulty of working around trying to save them and make them less hazardous is just not going to happen, then that's, you know.
And maybe
I'll-
they'll
I'll
have a
admit.
wonderful idea up there, you know,
Yeah.
So we'll see what they have to say, and before I get too far along, I want to show them a plan and then have their input, which is what they are encouraging people to do.
I'm sure they are, and that's a good idea. Is that the end of your presentation?
That's the end.
Apparently.
Is that short and sweet?
I thought,
It was-
you included a lot of other stuff, and so I thought maybe you were gonna go through and rediscuss
No.
where the beach was gonna fit and stuff
I
like
just
that.
gave it to you for your information,
Okay.
your reading pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much. And more reading materials. Which brings us to the request to make Merrimack a Purple Heart community. The town's to discuss and consider a request to make the town of Merrimack Purple Heart community. This has been presented by Maria Gorella, included members of the Legion and the BFW. If you guys want to come forward. Do you want to introduce this, or? Okay. Yeah, I do. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and introduce the topic, because I can't do it justice, so.
Well, thank you for having us, and my name is Marie Grella, and I'm here to invite Merrimack to be a Purple Heart community, and we have some veterans from your community that are here to support it also, and they can introduce themselves, and then I'll tell
Okay.
you what it is.
Oops. My name is Roland Roberge. I am the commander of American Legion Post 98 here in Merrimack.
And yes, my name is Janet Foster, and I'm the commander of the VFW 8641 in Merrimack.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
If you choose to become a Purple Heart community tonight, you'll be the 10th one out of many to come. A Purple Heart community is, the purpose of a Purple Heart community is to create a tribute to the men and women who have been awarded the Purple Heart Medal. With the presence of the signs designating your town as a Purple Heart community, the public will have a visual reminder of the sacrifices paid by the Purple Heart recipients and a notice that your town supports the military heroes who have made sacrifices for the way life of our residents, for our residents to enjoy.
Can I just ask you to back up a little bit?
Sure.
Because some of us aren't as familiar with what the Purple Heart is awarded for as we might ought to be. So if
Would you like to address
some
that?
or one of you
Are
could
you
just kind of
familiar?
describe what that award is
I-
for, or
Sorry.
how it's received.
The Purple Heart is awarded for military members who are injured in combat or during military service.
Okay, but specifically in a combat situation?
Yes,
Right.
that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, so some injury, it's not specific to how much injury or loss of an arm or leg or something?
No,
like
as
that,
long
just-
as they're injured in combat itself, it could be a bullet wound, it could be a shrapnel from a knife or from a grenade or anything of that nature, they will get the Purple Heart.
Okay,
It is for the members of the armed forces of the United States
right.
who are wounded, as they said. The heritage is presented as sacrifice to those who understand the price paid to wear it. In order to become a Purple Heart community, you have to have one recipient in your town. I, as representing them to become, you to become a Purple Heart community, cannot know who it is. It's confidential information. And I've gone to towns and asked if they've had one, and unless they've registered their vehicle, I have no way of finding out. So, and I've come upon a town that has none registered, but I know personally there is one in there. So all I have to do is have one, and then you can become a Purple Heart community. This is not a project that is supposed to cost the town anything. I have a sheet here that I'll be happy to leave with you that's been updated since I met with Becky. And it tells you the cost of the signs. And like I said, it shouldn't cost the town unless you do not have a VFW or a American Legion in your town. But you do have veterans that attend them. They've been able to help purchase signs for your town. So in order to, Amherst and the towns that I have been going to have purchased 6 signs, and it's a package of $550. And the signs, I have a sample, and I had left Becky a whole package, and she said she was gonna share it with all of you. And the signs are absolutely gorgeous. When the headlights hit on them, they illuminate, and it's beautiful.
Oh, that's good.
And then the Department of Public Works, once the signs come, will put them up. And they'll get permission from, if they have on a state road, they'll contact the gentleman that's on this form, and they have it here. And they'll see if Dig Safe will come out, and he'll check all it so that you have that permission done. So all I really am here for tonight is to see if you've agreed to become a Purple Heart community, and if you've drawn up a proclamation. If you have done a proclamation, you've all signed it, then tonight we will make it official, and these people will be here to accept you becoming one. Any questions?
So, yeah, I mean, if we have to know we have at least one, can you guys verify that we have at least one
Right.
Purple Heart attendee? I appreciate that.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. He's here because we know him. The other guys, we have no idea who they are.
Okay.
And it's not our business. It's not our business. I know them by the plates on their cars.
Do you folks want to add anything to this at this point?
I just have a quick question. If the Department of Public Works will be helping us, or wherever they're gonna put them in, I have no idea in town where to put these signs.
Yeah.
Where's the most traffic travel, where people would see it more than anybody else? You know, and maybe that, I don't know if the Department of Public Works would know, or you would know, where these signs would be really advantageous to the whole town.
What we've done in the past with the other towns, the town administrator or the DPW fellow has sat down. I personally did Amherst. I went around Amherst, and I came in from Bedford, I came in from Merrimack, I came in from Mount Vernon, I came in from Milford, and that's how we did it. So if you just take your area and you just figure out your points of coming into Merrimack, that's where you can put them. You can, like I said, you can have 6, you can have 12. The more visibility, the better. Because
Absolutely.
these folks need
Eileen?
to be recognized.
Yeah.
The DPW director is sitting right behind you, so he can,
Thank you.
I don't know if he has a card that you want to,
It has nothing, no, it would be,
note with Mr.
No.
Roberge, I'm talking about.
oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe that,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
what I was saying is maybe you, the two of you, who are from the VFW and the American Legion, can work with Kyle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you know
Yes.
Kyle?
The name rings a bell.
Do you have a
I
card?
know Carl, yes. See, names I'm bad with, faces I will not forget.
That's how I.
And Carl, I do know Carl, yes.
Kyle.
The other thing I want to say is that with, as the commander of the VFW and myself, commander of the American Legion, at our next meeting, we will bring this proposal up as far as the money-wise. If we can find out basically how many signs, where they're gonna go, and how we have to call the state. But I'm pretty sure they will have no problems in acquiring this amount of money to put the signs in for the town and make Merrimack a Purple Heart community. I don't think we'll have any problems whatsoever.
Plus, the signs are coming from the state of New Hampshire House of
yeah.
Correction. So we're keeping our money right in the state.
Right in the state.
And helping. When this project started, the gentleman I was working with bought his signs from Massachusetts that didn't go over very well with me. So we are now doing, and I got it through our Department of Public Works, the information and all the contacts. So we've stayed right in our own town, state.
Okay. And Janet, did you have something you wanted to add, or?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for the work you've done
Thank you.
getting into this proposal to the town. And thank you for hearing our proposal and hopefully approving it to
Okay.
recognize the Purple Heart community.
Thank you. Barbara?
So, Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion?
Well, I have a proclamation here. Let me read it, and then we can take a motion to
Mhm.
accept it. The Town of Merrimack, New Hampshire Proclamation, Purple Heart Community. Whereas the people of the town of Merrimack have great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all the citizens of our community who have selflessly served in the armed forces, that has been vital in maintaining the freedom and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas citizens of our community have been killed in action while serving in the armed forces and have been posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for their ultimate sacrifice, and whereas citizens of our community have been awarded the Purple Heart for their bodily sacrifice of being wounded by the hand of the enemy while engaged in combat, and whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest American military decoration and was created as the badge of military merit, made of purple cloth in the shape of a heart with the word merit sewn upon it, on August 7, 1782, in Newburgh, New York, by General George Washington. And whereas the heritage it represents is sacred to those who know the price paid to wear the Purple Heart. And whereas August 7th is nationally recognized as Purple Heart Day. And now, therefore, we, the Merrimack Town Council, hereby proclaim Merrimack, New Hampshire, a Purple Heart community, honoring the service and sacrifice of those from our community who were awarded the Purple Heart while serving in our nation's wars. And also be it proclaimed, we, the town of Merrimack, New Hampshire, will recognize August 7th annually as Purple Heart Day and urge the people and organizations of Merrimack to display the American flag as well as other public expressions of recognition of our Purple Heart recipients, proclaimed this 21st day of November 2019 by the Merrimack Town Council.
So moved.
Seconded,
Motion
Mr.
to
Chairman.
accept by Barbara, seconded by Bill Boyd. Is there any discussion?
Just one comment. After I read the package, and it took me about 2 seconds, not even.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. It's great recognition of people who deserve it.
Thank you very much.
Barbara?
Right, and as a veteran myself, as well
Thank
as
you
a
for your
member of the
service.
American Legion, I definitely support this. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Is there any other question or discussions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote on this proclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. We have 3 copies here. They want us to sign all 3 of them. I'm going to send them together. And then we'll give you 2 copies, is that right?
Yes.
To take with you?
Yes, and what they've done we've done is the purpose, the first one is framed and put in your town hall so the public can see it.
Right, and that's the fancy one we have.
And you'll be put on the map, that you'll become a Purple Heart community.
Sounds
Tom-
great.
It is different from the Purple Heart Trail.
Right.
Right.
There's a Purple Heart Trail, and you can put the names of the veterans on a sign. There's no names for any of
Right.
this. It's sacred, you just can't publicize it.
Yeah, the signs are 24 inches wide by 30 inches high. It's a big Purple Heart itself. And on the bottom it will say, Merrimack, New Hampshire, a Purple Heart community. No names, that way we keep in line with all the rules and regs.
Out of full respect for those people that have received the Purple Heart, absolutely. That's great. Yes, sir. Come up. Please let us know who you are, and
I don't know if this thing is on or not. I have no idea.
it'll be on or should be
Okay.
on.
My name is Salvatore Thomas Scally, Mr. McCallie. Close. I served in Vietnam 1968, 1969. Proud to have done my services to the country. And I'm most proudly to acknowledge that this town wants to take up this cause. I am very appreciative. I've traveled through America quite a few times. No, not across, but many years. I've seen many parts of streets and highways in honor of the Purple Heart. Now I am a recipient, and my plate has a Purple Heart on it, which you might have even seen it in town. BLKH. That is me. It stands for Black Horse, the unit that I fought with in Vietnam in 1969, in Pleiku, where it was my day. but I'm grateful that I'm here. And I'm very grateful to the town to take it and make it honorable for veterans. Veterans do not look for accolades. They don't look for acknowledgement. We just accept what the community, not give, but bestows upon them. Maybe I'm using the wrong words. I apologize, but I think you get the gist. Thank you for doing it. And
Thank you, sir.
one more thing. I will be gone in years to come, but the town of Merrimack will always have this sign that will acknowledge its veterans. And that is the most important part, because this is a long-going trend, what's going on in our country. It'll be here long after I'm gone. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And that's what it's all about. It's all about recognizing our veterans.
Sal,
In years
just,
to come.
just one correction, not to pick on you or anything, but there is no cost to the town. He said there might be a cost to the town. There is no cost to the town whatsoever, just to correct it. I know this is being live and it's gonna go on TV, that people might see it and say, our tax dollars again, but there's no tax dollars involved whatsoever. It'll be done with the VFW and the American Legion. Thank you.
The one thing I would like to add is I'd like to have a picture taken of this proclamation with the committee so that we can spread the word throughout our communities that we have been acknowledged as a Purple Heart community. So if you could give us that time to take that picture, we would really appreciate it.
Plus, I have over 200 more towns and cities to reach, so as much help I can get, I'd appreciate it.
That's quite the challenge.
Yes, it
You're
is.
gonna use our picture to convince them.
Well, Wilton actually made the website for the Purple Hat when we did theirs, and I just saw it today, and I was very pleased. But no, we just gotta get the word out, and I'm only one person, so if we can do as much as we can, as quick as we can, it's helpful.
And chances are the picture probably will be in the National Telegraph.
That would work. Bill, you wanted to say?
Hopefully.
Just a quick comment to Sal. I've seen you at all the Memorial Day ceremonies, and you're a very humble human being because you're not doing yourself justice. I believe you were awarded the Silver Star, or was it the Bronze Star? No, it's the CIB though, correct? And it was combat jump as well?
You only get the CIB if somebody's shooting at you.
That's correct. That's why you know it better than I do, sir.
That's why I got the CIB and the Purple Heart, because I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's the way you want to portray it. But I fought the battle.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to recognize you.
Many others as well.
There's a lot of people in our community that served, and I feel obligated with you speaking tonight to at least recognize you publicly, along with all the other veterans here that have served. So, thank you.
There's two other veterans there also, Max Quayle and, I'm sorry, I never remember your name. Mike. They also served in Vietnam.
Thank you.
Under combat.
Thank you.
Just
And
to let you know.
I am amazed and very much pleased with all the veterans. I know that especially the Vietnam War was not a popular one, and it was a serious
No.
problem. I am glad to see us recognizing all of our veterans much more than we ever did when they came home. I was this close to going to Vietnam. They stopped the draft the year my number was 8. So I didn't get drafted, but I very much appreciate all the effort and all the work that everybody's done, and especially because Vietnam's a lot closer to my life. Those folks, I really appreciate all the efforts that they've done.
I served during the time of Vietnam, but I served not in country. So I'm classified as a Vietnam veteran era soldier. My job was bombers and fuelers outside the country that took care of Vietnam, that we didn't have to go inside of it. But so that's what two different designation, you know.
Awesome.
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank
You want to have a picture tonight, right now, with this proclamation? Is that okay with everybody? I can't imagine anybody saying no at this point, but I. Okay, and you needed those 2 copies?
Right here?
I think we'll come out front here.
and the traffic's already involved. And bike lane is gonna make it worse. And some of the. Share with us.
Yeah, right. But you're supposed to be talking. Good point, good point.
We'll get a picture of the proclamation.
Hey, bonjour, ça va? Tu vas bien, Marcel? Oui. Sidecar. She wants a sidecar. She wants a sidecar with the dog with the little glasses. That's cool. I like that.
My base camp.
Yeah, same here. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay healthy. That's all we can do. Same here. Cool. Yes. Yes. Oh, okay. Yep, yep.
I'm so messed up. My jet lag is so big file.
Town hall's gonna be a big one. It's gonna be, the name rings a bell.
There we go.
I know, 4 o'clock.
Right, right.
It gets light dark here soon. I went, yeah, well, that's no different from the weather was just Thank you.
Where to put them.
Oh, good. Well, you make sure you tell them thank you for their service.
Okay, I think we need to try and pull the meeting back together, please.
Can I be tacky? I'll be tacky.
Oh, always good. Oh, good for him. Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Speaking of Bill Boyd.
Speaking of Bill and Barbara. Our next item on the agenda is Watson Park lighting. I don't know what the official agenda says. Item 2 under new business, submitted by Public Works Director Kyle Fox, who is right here. Town Council to review and discuss the proposed lighting plan for Watson Park.
I know. You got muck on your... Oh, the drama.
Gonna put me to sleep.
Really?
Somebody get Finley a bed. With the pool bed.
That's fine.
Visual acuity.
We got to keep the audience awake.
And the presenters.
And the presenter.
Good evening, Town Council.
Good
That
evening.
sure is a tough act to follow. But I'll do
Absolutely.
my best.
But you'll do your best.
Yep. I'm here tonight to give you an update on a proposal for Watson Park lighting for the skating rink. I thought I'd start by reminding you and the folks at home particularly of some of the recent improvements we've made to Watson Park based on recommendations of the Town Council and the Parks and Recreation Committee. Last year, we installed the 4x4 fencing you see in the top two pictures to kind of corral off the parking area, keep people from driving on the park, and I'd say it came out great and it looks beautiful. In July of last year, we opened up our new volleyball courts, which again I'm just so proud of. It was a great team effort from Public Works, Parks and Rec, and a contractor that helped us out, and it looks like a professional job, and I couldn't be more proud. With the volleyball courts comes a big sandbox that leads us into our discussion tonight. That sandbox is going to be the location of the skating rink. Now that it's no longer at O'Gara Drive, it's permanently going to be in Watson Park. We did have it in the park last year, but because of limited flat terrain, we had a smaller version of the normal rink. So this year we'll be able to put out the full rink. The posts for the volleyball court will come out, and we'll be able to lay it right on the ground in the sandbox.
Just scoop it out first.
Yes, exactly. So the proposal, I've been working with a vendor who's just completed an upgrade at wastewater of all our lights to LED lights. It was a huge success of a project. I'm working with him currently. He gave us a proposal to do the same at Town Hall, and you'll see that in the budget presentations when we get to it next month. While I was having that discussion, I asked him, could you put together a proposal for LED lights down at Watson Park? And I explained to him the desire of the Parks and Rec Committee and the Town Council to have kind of the Norman Rockwell kind of feel and, not blister people with blinding light. So this is the proposal he came up with. Basically, we would put, originally we had talked about doing 3 lights on one side. As we laid them out, the realization came that you don't really want to have light pole bases where people are running off a volleyball court. So we've located them in the 4 spaces between the 3 courts. The light poles that we've selected and the fixtures that we've selected to present as a proposal is seen in the picture here. It's a black pole with a black fixture, very decorative in nature. These are similar to what's found over at Strawberry Bank in Portsmouth. The picture at the bottom right kind of shows you what these bulbs would, or what these fixtures would put out for light as a 31 watt fixture. So very low energy cost for what you get out of this. If you've been to the volleyball courts, you see it is quite a big area. So the picture in the bottom right, it kind of showed you the shading. If it was bright white, that would be like daylight. So it's not very bright, but bright enough. We do have the ability to go to a 55 watt fixture that would light it up a little more, and but still give you the feel. It's not going to be you're not going to be able to play hockey at night, but I don't think that's what we want, and we don't want the neighbors to put up with that kind of light either. The nice thing about the LED lights, the picture on the left, you can see kind of the spread of the light. It focuses down and kind of around. So the great thing about LEDs is you don't get that light spread and the light pollution that you get with the old sodium kind of lights. Additionally, we'd like to add a fifth light. You can see the black dots kind of show where we're proposing the lighting. The fifth light would illuminate the path between the parking area to get to the rink. And that's the presentation. So I'd be
That's
happy
it?
to
Okay.
happy to take any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions? Barbara?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Paul. So another piece of great news we got. The vendor has said that if we act quickly, they'd be able to get the light pole bases and the wiring in this fall, and we could get the lights up for the skating season this year.
That's pretty awesome. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yeah. Have you tried going down to that area at night with the 30-watt bulb?
I haven't.
I'm just worried that it might not be bright enough.
Paul and I had discussed that, and we were leaning towards the 55-watt bulb.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Particularly if we want to generate some interest among older folks who still want to go out and skate. So
Right.
they like a little more light. I'll go watch.
I'll go skate. 35 watts, is that what you said?
31.
That's 30 watts, but what would that be the equivalent of in incandescent bulbs? I mean, that's...
I don't have that number
It's a lot
for you.
more than that, right?
It is.
150,
Certainly it is.
250 or something like that.
Right.
Because I think 100 watt is 18 LED watts or something
Right.
less than that.
Yeah.
But when you put them up in the air.
So that was one of my questions. How high are these poles? Or how high are these lights?
So I don't have that information on the height of the light poles.
Gotcha.
I apologize. You did.
Okay.
They're not terribly tall. They're designed to be short, probably in the 15-foot range.
And looking at your light pattern, it looks like it's doing something to try and spread into the court and minimize a little bit of the back, but the fixture itself doesn't look like it does anything to try and direct the light. We're kind of comfortable that we're not going to disturb the neighbors behind the courts and stuff?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. There's a couple factors there. The LED lights, going back to the first picture, you can see the light part of the fixture is completely encased in the bottom, in the bell of the fixture, so it only points down. The other factor is the houses are actually up above the park.
That's a good point, yeah.
Elevation wise. So I think they'll be able to see the light, but the light's not going to be
shining
pointing
at them.
into their windows.
Right.
Yes. And similar to what we had O'Gara, at O'Gara we'll put these on a timer. And typically what we used to do up there was they would shut off at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, depending what the Parks and Rec folks wanted.
We have an ordinance that says that the parks are closed at dusk, right? Except for this one, or do we need to make some kind of an exception to keep
That's a
this
great
open
question.
after dusk?
I thought we had changed that at one point, but I could be mistaken.
I don't think so.
That-
We do have the ordinance, yeah. So that'll be something that we'll need to
So I
look
guess we'll
into
have
to go
cross
with
that
the ice
hurdle
rink.
as well.
Okay.
That's a great comment. Thank you.
The upgrade from 31 to 55, that's a whole new fixture, or is it a bulb change, or?
It's a different fixture, but the fixture looks the same. They had 3 different lighting levels for this fixture. It was a lower one, I think around 15.
You have
31,
12 in
and
the paper you
55.
gave us.
Okay.
but-
Yeah.
Okay. And when are you going to make that decision on what size to use?
I was looking for guidance from
We don't
from
know.
you guys.
Just say Finley?
Well, I just know that, I'm a big advocate now of LED. I think they're great bulbs, and
Oh,
on
me
my
too.
front porch, on high, they're 15 watts, and it's the equivalent, I think it was of a 75 watt bulb. It looks like Fenway Park on my front porch, so.
Well,
It looks
yeah,
like,
but you're a
so
lot
4 of
closer.
them, I would think that the 50, the larger of the three would, you know, the largest one, 55, what was it, 50?
55.
55 watts. That's what I would think, but I,
Yeah. Are they dimmable?
I don't believe so. But that's a good question I could ask.
Because it might be worth having that option, just so
Right.
that you could dial it back if you needed to, or
Yeah.
wanted to for mood, or something like that.
Yeah, many LEDs are, so that
I
might
think
be a
that was-
possibility.
We'll have to dim
That
the
may
light.
cost more.
Paul?
The reason why Kyle and I, when we've got the proposal, we looked at the 31, is because of the, if you look, some of the corners were kind of gray on the ice skating rink.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, if there's a lot of people, some of the smaller kids kind of get pushed off to the corner a little bit. So when we were looking at this, we wanted to try to brighten it up so that families can be out there with their younger kids skating and things of that sort. So that's why when we asked the vendor, is there a bigger bulb? He came up with the 55, and he said that would illuminate it more. You still can't play hockey, but it'll illuminate it more for the ice skating rink. And being where it is in the park itself, which is in that back corner, away from the road, away from some of the streetlights, that's the other reason why we asked him, is there something else that we could go for, a brighter fixture because of where it is in the park? If it was more up front, the 31 would be great, but since it's in the back more, we're thinking the 55 with the tree cover and where it's located, it might be better for the 55. That was our thinking when we were talking to the vendor.
The 12 watts equal to 100 watts.
12 is equal to 100, okay.
So that's.
Yes, Lon? Oh, yeah.
So you're talking
300 watts per,
300 watts per.
or more.
And that's
yeah.
for the smaller.
But you're also up
You're also
probably
higher.
18, 20 feet, and
Right.
Lon?
Just a thought, if you're going to perhaps need to either revise or look at the ordinance, perhaps you could nip something in the bud and prohibit hockey from that rink in the evening.
The ordinance would be for the, after dusk. I'm not sure, I didn't follow Lon's thought.
Well, if we're already looking at the ordinance, we could also add in something that would
Okay.
suggest that the rink is not really a hockey rink or something to that effect. Or maybe after dusk, it's not a hockey rink or something.
I think it's policed itself. It seems like it's policed itself at the old rink.
In the
I-
past, it's not really big enough for,
Yeah.
you know.
Major games.
I'm not aware of it ever being an issue.
All right, well, we'll cross that bridge later. I had one more question. You showed the picture of the park to show a fifth stanchion. Would it make sense, because we're talking about the brightness level, to put like 2 poles of maybe the smaller wattage to light up that path a little better, or is it, you think that 1 pole is sufficient?
It adds some cost. I get,
Everything adds.
my advice would be that I'll talk with the vendor and see what he suggests. Because to me, it's just pictures on a paper. And-
Yeah, but if you go up to 55 or something like that, and you put that there, it makes one big bright spot in the middle with some dark edges
Right.
walking from the parking lot and stuff. And that,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking maybe the 30's there, but 2 of them would fill in that path a little better. But
Right.
and yeah, I know it would cost something, but there's a substantial difference from the
There
parking
is.
lot to that pole versus around the rink itself. So
There is, and I share your concern on that. We're
right.
trying to balance the cost. The cost for this proposal is quite a bit more than we thought it would be when we entered into this whole concept. So we're trying to be mindful of that, and still meet the goal.
do you want to talk about cost at all, or? is that-
Sure. So the proposal that we got from this vendor, who is a Eversource approved LED vendor, was $34,000 for the 55
For the
watt.
50 watt, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for all 5 poles?
That's for all 5 poles, the
Installed
electricity hookup. to the panel that's down there, all of the conduit in the ground, the light pole bases, the complete package.
And we don't have any problem with putting conduit underground, because we're
No,
gonna stay above the
we'll have to
2-foot
work
barrier.
through, we have the soil management plan for this work. You recall when we
Yeah.
were doing the fencing and the courts, that
Right.
we got a soil management plan approved by DES to do the work. And this work was included, so it's
Oh, okay.
basically just a phone call from me to DES to let them know we're doing this next phase.
Yeah, Peter?
Kyle, the way this is being put in, are we gonna construct it in such a way that, in the future, if we decide we wanna add a light or two as time goes on around the park, that we'll be able to do that off the current ductwork and everything?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Barbara?
So how is this being funded?
Did you want to make a donation?
No.
No.
Currently, we looked at a number of things. We have some salary savings from openings that we had in the highway DPW divisions, and we have an opening in general government that we're going to use some of those salary savings and redirect those monies. We talked to Town Manager Kevin L. about that, redirecting some of those monies into this project to make it happen, so it can happen this year.
And I think it's awesome that it could happen this year, and we're gonna be able to get the rink up on the full size and things of that nature. Eileen?
After listening to you talking about the light, I think that it would be a good idea for us to take a second look at of that. Since we're going to spend a decent amount of money anyway, we might as well do it right. And I like your idea, Tom. So.
Okay. So do you need a motion from us at this point, or just a nod of head approval?
I don't think so, because
or-
it's current budget money.
I think everybody's in favor of what you're proposing here.
The last thing I would just add is Matt Kasparius, Parks and Rec Director, had a Parks and Rec Committee meeting last night. And though this wasn't on the agenda, he did discuss it with them, and they were supportive as well.
I would hope, but thanks.
Yes.
That's good to hear. Okay. If there are no other questions, is there anything else you want to
No, I think
offer
that's
us?
it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. It looks awesome. And the opportunity to get it this year is pretty cool. Thank you.
Can we set up a hot chocolate vending?
Absolutely. Next item on our agenda is road acceptance of Barbie Court. Submitted by Deputy Public Works Director, Town Engineer Dawn Tomala. Town Council to consider the Planning Board's recommendation of a 2-year maintenance bond and recommended acceptance of Barbie Court. Acceptance of the road is conditioned upon the 2-year maintenance bond in the amount of $50,066.78, and the drainage solution constructed along the cross-country sewer line remaining satisfactory. You're back, Dawn. Can you get closer to the mic or pull it closer? Or yell,
On?
one of the two.
Turn it on would help.
That would help, thank
There
you.
we go. I performed a final inspection and approval of the road on October 14th. On October 15th, the planning board recommended that we send this forward to you for your approval. There is a maintenance bond of $50,000 in place, and the only stipulation was what you just read. There was a retaining wall put along the sewer access road that was put in place prior to doing the sewer by another owner of the abutting property, and it has caused an issue. They've been working through it and have come up with some solutions. It's been good for the last 8 months, but I wanted to make sure that it was in the acceptance in case we do have a problem in the next 2 years, because the maintenance bond will be there so that we can have it fixed if we need to. This road, okay, move. down arrow. There we go. Okay. So Barbie Court, just to give you a location of where it is, it's on Pearson Road. Bedford Road is to the left and towards the Bedford Road is to the left, and Bedford Town Line would be going up towards, on the right-hand side. Barbie Court, down arrow, is only a 250-foot long road with it ends in a cul-de-sac. And they have been constructing that for the last several years, actually, since I came here. But for a number of reasons, we did not accept it until this point here, and they've worked through all of the conditions that we had given them. And that's a picture of what it looks like today.
What is the sign saying?
The sign there is telling everybody that until the town council approves it, this is a private road.
Oh,
So
okay.
tomorrow morning, that can come down and the town seal can be put onto the town sign, road sign.
Okay. This came before the planning board when I was sitting on it, and I abstained from voting for it, but the DPW has always been very good at very carefully at explaining the situation of the road, the condition of the road, and setting the maintenance bonds to be able to maintain it. And so I've never had a problem with accepting the roads that they've suggested to us. And the planning board did vote 3-0-1 to accept it. It was a low turnout that night. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Barb?
So Don, after the bond is over in 2 years, what is the cost of the maintenance on this road? Projected?
Whatever our normal maintenance.
Yeah. I mean, and why is this not a driveway? Why is it a road?
Because there are 5 houses on it.
Okay. Just in case anybody's wondering, because
Yeah, no.
it kind of looks like a driveway.
There's 1,
Well,
2,
it's a
3,
really wide
4,
driveway.
5 houses.
Well, think about it.
It was a cluster subdivision, so their houses are closer together, and there's more land around the outside
Right.
that is under conservation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I took a look at that area for a different reason, because the Heritage Commission has a stone wall project going on with the state, and there was a beautiful stone wall there, so I have to go back and look and see how much is left.
Any other? Finley?
Actually, my question really doesn't pertain to the item at hand, but the comment, Conservation Commission, conservation property around it, is it conservation property? Or is it actually
It's
divvied up
open
by-
space, and I
land.
It's
thought,
open- yeah, oh,
yeah. I don't
it might,
remember
it's not
whether,
important, I can find out later, but I didn't think we should be taking those properties like that, because it is part of the property taxes on each individual home normally.
okay, so it's open space then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of them have been given to conservation, and I know Bramber Estates, that part, or part of that had been given to conservation, so I've been working with both of them at the same time
I
here.
appreciate that.
But I know all of the deeds to the roads and all of the easements that we required, and the plan has been recorded in the Registry of Deeds. So those are all there. They've been approved by the town council, and
Great,
they're all recorded and ready.
thanks, Don.
Eileen?
Just for future reference, no property gets given to the Conservation Commission without acceptance from the town council. So if the town council has not accepted this,
So it's open space, part of
it's
a
open
cluster
space.
subdivision.
And I
yeah.
understand that, but
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that people just aren't able to just hand over land to to the town and not pay taxes on it. It actually has to be an act of handing it over and deeding it to conservation through the town council, though. So, so people aren't just, that's not what's occurring.
This was a part of a larger subdivision. Hamilton Court was done first, years before I even came. So this was started when I had come. So the subdivision had been done. I made sure that all the deeds that we need are there.
So we're looking for a motion to accept.
Just one more question.
Peter?
On the street next to it, Hamilton Court, I believe different developer though. Did we accept that street?
Yes. I believe that was the very first thing I came before this council to do, and Kyle was with me almost 3.5 years ago. I think I came in
We're having
July, and
too
I think
much
I did
fun.
that in August.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to accept Barbie Court, and with the maintenance bond as defined at $50,066.78 for a minimum of 2 years.
So
Yes.
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Bill Boyd and seconded by Lon Woods. Any other comments or questions or suggestions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining. That passes 7-0-0. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Moving right along, bringing us to number 4 on our agenda, the Highway Garage Complex signage update, submitted by Finance Director Paul McCallie and Public Works Director Kyle Fox, the Town Council to receive an update on the proposed Highway Garage Complex sign. Or simple sign, what, oh, never mind. That would be the police department sign, Paul.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. Wrong building, yes, no. We are basically 99% finished with the highway garage project. We just have a couple of small things that we're working through. There's a little bit of fencing that needs to be done, looking at some security cameras to go in there. But one of the last things is the highway garage sign. The reason why I'm bringing up the police department sign is that Kyle and I looked through all our emails. We've knowingly seen the sign because we sent it to a vendor and the vendor sent it back. Somehow, neither one of us can find what we sent. However, we know that it was very similar to this Merrimack Police Department sign.
Okay.
As you'll see, it says Merrimack Police Department up top. What the highway sign will say will be Town of Merrimack Highway and Maintenance Complex. That was talked about at the retreat, and I believe that was the consensus of the naming convention. Underneath, it won't say crime line. Underneath, it would have that electronic board. The police department has a rolling electronic board. This will be a stationary electronic board underneath it. Being in a residential neighborhood, if the council so desires, being in a residential neighborhood, we're seeing if that could be on a timer. So at like 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, from 6:30 to 9:30, it would be up and running 7 days a week, and then off at night. So, because we do have neighbors right across the street, and even though it's not a bright light, it's still an additional light. So we're looking at to see if we can get a timer on that. The location of the sign has not been picked out, but it will be near the new entryway. We'll be working with the vendor because of lines of sights and things of that sort from the northbound side, southbound side, and actually people exiting the new facility to make sure it's not in their way when they leave. And then there'll be some kind of planter underneath it, sort of like this, with plants and flowers and things of that in the summertime. Why I'm coming before you tonight is basically to get your final yay or nay. Do you want the electronic portion of the sign? And the reason why we're bringing forward the electronic portion of the sign is, as you know, we have sporadic throughout town. The police station has one, library has one. There's an electronic sign at solid waste. We have the 2 mobile ones that we try to put out to inform people. We don't have a sign in the Turkey Road Hill area of people commuting back and forth there to say, hey, there's an election, hey, there's a meeting, or there's a deliberative session, things of that sort. So we thought this would be an opportunity. Sometimes what happens is DPW takes one of those mobile signs, the highway division, and sticks it out front to say, hey, deliberative sessions tonight. Well, now that we have 2 of them, and we have a location in the north end and the south end that we like to put them, this would alleviate them from having to keep one at their facility. So.
Yep, Barbara?
No, I think that's an excellent idea because folks who live on that far west side, you know, some of them have approached me and told me they didn't know, say, one of the PFAS meetings was going on, or, you know, I didn't know there was a town meeting going on, because they don't necessarily come out to DW. So I think that's an excellent idea. In fact, I was hoping, I was going to suggest we did that if that wasn't already included, so, thank you.
And there is money left in the bond to purchase the sign.
Pete?
Paul, why not a scrolling sign?
Kyle?
Style?
Got him. No, he said
Kyle.
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 There's reasons, and actually Kyle has those reasons.
Mr. Style himself.
Yeah, so every time I get the request to put the message boards out for messaging, I get a little bit of agita. The true purpose of portable changeable message boards is to alert motorists to upcoming traffic changes. Many towns use them for messaging here and there, and that's a great thing to do. But when you do that, you really need to limit the messages you put on, because A, you don't want to distract drivers, and B, in that limited attention that they can give it while still paying attention to the road, you only want, really, our rule is maximum of 2 screens, and just one, then the other, because you really want to keep the driver's focus on the road. So that's the reason we wouldn't do a scrolling one, because if you have a scrolling message, it's going to tend to keep their eyes on the message.
Okay, and I guess, and that makes sense. I know that a lot of people appreciate the messages at the PD. And I don't know if the one you're looking at, I know at the PD, they use I think it's a laptop, and they program the messages, the time, the date, so it should be pretty easy to time it to when it comes on and off, right?
We would hope. I reached out to the vendor. The vendor didn't get back to me in time for the meeting. But we're hoping that that will be the case where we can shut it down and turn it black at night.
It would certainly have the communication part that we could change it from a laptop.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and the public messaging for that section, that roadway is so busy.
I think we have an ordinance dictating that signs like that can't change, but for every so many minutes. I think it's
Commercial
15 minutes.
properties, not town properties.
Well, I recognize that, but I believe we should be doing what we require of our businesses.
I do too. But I think that the ordinance is a little wacky, because it's got a 5-minute timer or
Is it
something
5? I thought it was
on
15, but yeah, it's a long time.
It's
But
a
they
long
didn't-
time.
The point was, they didn't want to change you when you're driving because, you know.
Because it's distracting.
Yeah.
Any other questions? What's the orientation of the sign, Paul? You indicated that you were concerned about the neighbors across the street getting too much light, but if it's oriented to face the street,
It will be facing, the southerly and northerly side, but there is a house right across the street that their driveway is pretty in line with ours. So, things of that sort. We're trying to be more friendly with our neighbors over there.
I get that, but I just think if it's along the street, the chances of it bothering somebody is a lot less. But I don't know relative to our driveway where this other one is. Anyway, okay. I just wanted to make sure it was going to be aligned for
Yeah, it's gonna
traffic
be
to
lined
see
with-
it,
with
not necessarily
no,
for
yes,
somebody going
no,
into the DPW
no.
complex to see it.
Definitely northerly and southerly, or
Perpendicular.
Up and down the street.
perpendicular to the road.
Yep, okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Are we looking for
It
a
sounds like
particular
we got
response?
consensus that the town council's in favor of a sign like this, so I think
I absolutely am. so.
Yeah, we didn't want to put something up and then say, what the heck is this?
Well, you never asked
We
us
never
that.
asked us. So,
And we
yeah.
wanted to get it a little bit out to the public too, so.
I think it's great, and I agree that a message sign there, as much as it probably should be for traffic, it also is really nice to be able to tell people that today's a good day to vote, or something like that.
Right. So,
Okay, and that would catch a lot of traffic that doesn't necessarily catch the north or south if they hit the highway. And,
Get used to saying it too.
yep. And it doesn't have to have stuff. I mean, it could be blank.
well, we talked about that, we talked about that as well.
Okay,
We don't wanna make it white noise.
like what?
White noise that,
Oh, right.
people don't pay
Yeah, that
attention
people
when you
just
put
don't
up
pay
a
any
message
attention
that
anymore.
is on.
Very good.
Okay.
Sounds great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Which brings us to item number 5 on our agenda, which is a first quarter quarter financial review. Were you adding something? Finance, submitted by Finance Director Paul T. McCallie. Finance, it says that. Finance Director Paul McCallie will review the key financial information of the quarter ending September 30th, 2019.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
As part of the charter, we, the finance department, have to present quarterly the financial findings of the town. I want to, before I start here, to let you know that we have finished the 18-19 audit, and we should be getting our audit reports hopefully by the first week in December. So,
Is that later than usual? Or?
it's a little earlier than usual. Usually
Oh,
we
really?
get them in
Oh.
January or so. So, want to thank Tom Boland. I dropped it on his lap and said, all right, I want this done sooner than later. And he really went back and forth several times with the auditors about wording and you know, where's this number versus that number. So, but just want to let you know that it's coming out. It's a clean opinion again for my 15th year here. And I haven't seen any management report yet, but I would have to say that if we do get a management report, it's going to be very minor. They didn't find a lot that they really had to question. Our procedures and our policies are working as planned, so that's always good to know too.
Is this a new company this year?
This is a brand-new company this year. This is their first time they audited, so, which is always nice when you change auditors and they don't find a whole lot of stuff.
That was
So,
me.
As for the first quarter, financially, we're doing fine. At this time, I believe we do have sufficient appropriations to last us throughout the year. As you'll see as I go through, we do have some openings in some of our key departments. And then we do have some other training opportunities available in those key departments because of some of the openings that are there. But get right into it, is health insurance. Health insurance is at $760,000 for the quarter, roughly about $50,000 more. We had an increase last year. It's right in line with our increase. Projecting a little bit higher than what I projected during the budget, and that's mainly due to a shift in our census. So,
In your what?
in the census. So we have single, two-person, and family
Oh.
plans. So when I do it back in October, like I've done for this next budget coming up, I look at what our census is, and I do a blended rate for everybody in the town. So there's been a little bit shift. There's been some families, some two-persons have shifted to family, and some singles have shifted to two-person. So some of our census shift. It's a little bit higher, but we're projecting to be okay.
So I'm just going to pick on something real quick. You talked about our census, and a lot of us, when we hear that word, are thinking the entire town. And then you just said everybody in town. You really mean all of the staff in town?
The staff, the municipal staff.
So we're not talking about an insurance policy for everybody in town?
No,
This is-
we're talking about the census of the individuals in town hall, the 181 covered full-time employees that we have in town.
And some of them choose family versus single versus
Correct.
whatever, and that's where you're seeing the shift. Thank you.
New Hampshire retirement is running the same. As you know, last year, there was no rate increase. So, the retirement is running basically constant what we planned out in last year for this time. Fire's down a little bit, and that is, due to their overtime being a little bit down. So, overtime comparisons, I know this is a very, busy slide. But like I said, as you'll see, you really can't see it so much on the slide, but fire is down. Fire is down from $102 to $98,000. That shifts a little bit. But when you're talking about 30% retirement rates on every dollar we spend in fire salaries, that's why you see the savings in retirement, is because even though their overtime's down, so that helps. The one that really increased was police. It went from $73,000 to $99,000, almost $100,000. The reason why that shot up is twofold. We've had some vacancies in the police department over the summer. We have filled those positions. However, because we have filled those positions, we have training that goes along with those filled positions. That's overtime. We're filling the shift with overtime with the trainer. So those gentlemen should be up and running shortly. We have one at the academy, and I believe he's graduating soon, so he'll be with the training officer shortly. So we'll be basically fully staffed. We're short one police officer, and I believe we're in the throes of hiring that position as we speak. So, but that's where we come up with some overtime there. Solid waste is a little bit higher. We've had some vacancy, not vacancy so much, but some injuries that we've been covering. And we just want to reiterate this once. When we send somebody over to solid waste on a Saturday from the highway division, it's 100% overtime. So that's why their overtime spikes a little bit, because we're paying the gentleman to cover the shift. He's on overtime to cover the shift. Whereas transfer station runs Tuesday through Saturday. On Saturdays, they're not normally on overtime. But if we bring somebody in to cover a shift, it's usually overtime.
It's overtime for that, yeah.
Overtime for that shift. And then our other departments, we saw a spike, and a lot of that had to do, not a big, it went from about 1,000 to 2,000, but a lot of that had to do with information technology. And this quarter, we'll see another spike on our information technology, and that's that's in the general government, we'll see that spike. And that one from, $1,200 to $4,000, and mostly that's related to our IT department. We've had some issues with phone, in this quarter with phones, but before that, we had some other issues with some IT, problems with servers and phone lines and things of that sort. Our other departments are running pretty much on schedule. They're only up a little bit, and that's like tax and assessing and community development and all the other departments in town that are part of general government, the general government forms, code enforcement, things of that sort. So that's where we're getting a little bit more overtime with that. Revenue comparisons. Revenues are doing great again. Interest is up. Interest is about $60,000 more. About $30,000 more than last year. Interest is falling back, though. The rates are coming back down a little bit. However, I think because of our health and what we have, we should be fine with the numbers that we've put in for revenue, and I see us hitting that number. Building permits are higher as well. They're up about $17,000 over last year. And as you can see, the gentleman earlier talked about the building that's going on in the Route 3 corridor. There's other buildings outside of the Route 3 corridor that are taking effect too, and we're working on. And that's helping our building permits as well as individual homeowners investing in their properties, which is always nice. And then auto registrations continue to grow. They're up $60,000 over the quarter, this same quarter last year. So it continues to grow. I look out my window and I do not see as many new temporary plates coming in, but there's been a lot of cars and a lot of people coming in registering cars or registering, a car that's been off the road a little bit. So things of that sort, but it continues to grow, and I don't foresee any problem hitting our $5.4 million auto registration revenue that we had. Once again, I'd like to say that we are healthy. The town is in a good shape. Financially, we're doing fine. I don't foresee any major issues at this time. However, because we're so tight, as we talked about when we did do our MS4 back in September to set the tax rate, we really did raise some of our interest in our auto registrations and our building permits. And I will be keeping a close eye on those revenues, and if anything happens, I'm sure you'll be the second person to know after actually the third. After Eileen, you'll be the next people
We'll be next.
to know that where we stand with that. And like I said, I believe we have sufficient appropriations to get us through this year.
Okay. Are there any questions, Peter?
Paul, reading this expenditure report
Yep.
covered by department,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at Highway 08 and Solid Waste 09.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the summary by department expenditure report, and I'm looking at Highway 08 and Solid Waste 09. And it shows that they're below 50% of their budget remaining.
In solid waste and in highway, those are because of the encumbrances. We had some big projects. We have some big bridge projects that we have encumbered. You know, it shows, in highway, it shows $4 million out of the 10 million being encumbered. So that's 40% of their budget being encumbered that way. They have enough money. It's because of those encumbrances. The everyday salaries and all other expenses and road paving and things of that sort are covered. So we do have money to cover those. And in solid waste, the same thing. At the beginning of the year, July 1st, we set up an encumbrance or a purchase order for what we believe will be the trash that we send out. And the recycling we sent out, we set up 2 purchase orders, and that's a big chunk of their budget to begin with. So that's why it shows that they're down, but their salary numbers and their other expenses like electricity, heating oil and things are all, natural gas are all in line with where they should be.
You don't foresee an issue then in March or anything?
No, I do not.
Okay, now welfare is run down pretty well as well. We
Well-
have just a lot of people or?
No, welfare, what happens is that $77,000 of her budget is to outside agencies, and those get paid July 1st.
Okay.
So right off the bat, we send out a check for $77,000. That's almost, a third of her budget. Her budget's $160,000, so, it's a little more than a third of her budget that goes out right away.
That makes sense. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
I'm glad you brought up welfare, though. We are seeing an uptick in housing, paying for housing. We're keeping an eye on that. Pat's keeping a very strict eye on it. She's extremely well with the numbers, and so she's keeping an eye, and actually every day she comes in and places calls if somebody's in a hotel about shelters and things of that sort. So she's really mindful of it, and she's keeping me abreast of it. But right now, we think we should be okay. It all depends. This cold snap might affect us in a different way because the state's heating has not kicked in yet. So we might see some heating bills or electricity bills for this cold snap that we've had in November. But we'll know that in December and January. You're welcome.
Okay, but the overall assessment from your perspective is that we're in good shape?
We're in good shape.
One
and we have-
quarter in?
1 quarter and we're in good shape. Actually, a little more than a quarter.
But you're only
these
reporting based on the quarter.
Quarter,
so.
right.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Did you have something specific, Ben, to this topic?
I want to ask one question of Paul. How many vehicles do we register in town each year? Roughly. Give me a sec. Gotta go old school here. If you don't have it handy, around 25,000. 25,000? Or roughly 25. We have the road tax of $5 a registration at
Right.
125,000. So 5 times 25,000 is 125, so.
Okay, thanks. So the
Old
question
school.
was how many vehicles we register, and it's about 25,000 a
About
year.
25,000 a year.
Okay. Is that, no other questions? That cleans out our agenda, bringing us to minutes. And we have minutes from November 7th of 2019. Ready?
Mr. Chairman, I move the town council meeting minutes of Thursday, November 7, 2019 is presented.
Moved by Bill and seconded by Peter. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Any other corrections, additions, deletions?
Talked to Barbara because I didn't see any.
Barbara?
Let's see, first one is on page 7, line
7.
41, 40, I'm sorry, 40. She strongly disagrees with that, knowing that solar energy benefits all. Is that correct English, or do we want to say the knowledge that solar energy benefits all?
She strongly disagrees with that, knowing.
With that, knowing
Yeah,
that solar
the
energy
that
benefits
knowing
all.
part doesn't quite,
Well, there's probably a
Take
comma
out the that.
needed
Yeah.
right there after that,
then put a comma in there.
after,
Okay.
Page 9, line 29. He still has the power
he still has to pay power for, I'm sorry, he still has to pay, and it just says power to both, but he has to pay for power to both. In other words, he has two sources he has to pay for his power.
Yeah,
Okay.
that works.
Page 17, line 22, there's the on the question right after it, you need a space. I sound like Bill.
Thank you.
I don't usually catch this. On page 23, line 16. Eileen, aren't they finishing isn't it the undeveloped portion of Blood Road, Old Blood Road? Or is it developed? If you read the way it says.
We are receiving money for the developed portion.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Further down, if I can interrupt, line 22, it says that the developer will pay approximately $6 million. You meant the development. The people that buy the houses will pay that in taxes, and it's not really $6 million.
Yes, that's correct. That was way off, and I apologize for that. It's actually $600,000.
Right. So the $6 million could go to $600,000 because that's the accurate number.
That's right.
But it's not the developer that's paying that. It's the development. It's the people
The
that buy the houses.
development, yes, exactly.
So if we could change developer to development, then, go ahead. Anything else?
Yep, 25. line
Page.
7. Yeah, page 25, line 7. Another on the question that needs a space in between. And then finally, on page 26, line 40, when I referred to bottled water, it wasn't 1 and 2.5 gallon bottles, it was 5 and 2.5 gallon bottles. That's it.
And I have a question on page 29, if nobody else does. Line 17, Karen Hudson from the DW Diner contacted her to make her aware that they will be serving a Thanksgiving dinner on Thanksgiving Day from 8 to 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all accurate? 8 to 10 a.m. they're serving dinner?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Before the main rush hits, I think that was the,
Right.
Okay. And then on line 20, it should be noted that, just to leave, I don't remember what word it was that I deleted, but noted that 7/2/21 is the town's 275th anniversary. Any other changes or corrections to the minutes? We have a motion to accept them as, with corrections.
so moved.
Well, we had a motion to accept them. We've made corrections. I'd like to call for a vote with the corrections. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. We still have an agenda item or two, if you don't mind. Comments from the press? Comments from the public? Comments from the council? Barb?
Mr. Chair, you just said it, but I'm going to say again, the DW Diner is going to have a free turkey dinner between the hours of 8 and 10 on Thanksgiving Day for those who are not able to celebrate that day due to unfortunate circumstances. So thank you.
Okay.
Because we had talked about it as being in the minutes, but I
Yep.
just wanted to make
No.
sure that people realize that it is coming up next week and that is available to them.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if we've talked about this previously, but Mr. Niles refreshed my recollection. Several weeks ago, you and I had the opportunity to sit with Governor Sununu, Representative Hench, Eileen, Kyle Fox, to discuss. We met with Victoria Sheehan, who's the Commissioner for the Department of Transportation, along with Christopher Watchuk, who's the Deputy Commissioner. And it was a discussion on some of the various traffic problems that we are currently experiencing here in the town of Merrimack. Part of the conversation that we talked about included a complete traffic study from the Bedford line going all the way down to Nashua, working with the NRPC to begin to look at those specific analyses as it relates to how to deal with the traffic, because I think we all realize that we're not going to be building a bridge along the Merrimack River anytime soon, so something needs to be done. And we had that conversation with the governor and with the Commissioner of Transportation at that time. The second piece that we talked about, on top of also the toll piece, which we found out tonight from Councilor Pignatelli regarding Exit 11, was looking at the opening of a northbound on-ramp from Exit 12 at Bedford Road and an southbound off-ramp at Exit 12. I don't know if folks had the opportunity to look at the email that Eileen had sent out to us. I looked at it very briefly, but NRPC did a study back in 2004 providing an analysis as to what an on-ramp and off-ramp, northbound on-ramp, southbound off-ramp would look like at Bedford Road. And Director Fox has already begun having a discussion with NRPC Director Jay McCarr about expounding upon that particular study in 2004 to kind of update those numbers and begin to put some real hard data as it relates to looking at opening up that particular area, which I think could ameliorate the situation that we are currently experiencing on Daniel Webster Highway. We also did get a conceptual look as to what it would entail for the DOT to do those on and off ramps at that location. They communicated to us that it's not as simplistic as I think a lot of us would think it would be. But again, it was strictly conceptual. It was presented to us, and certainly looking forward to see how that particular thought continues on as we have that particular discussion. And then lastly, when we had our 10-year plan presentation at the town of Bedford, it was Executive Councilor Gatzis that held that particular meeting. Many of us had spoke at that particular time. Councilor Albert was at that meeting, advocating for some of the things for relief with the condominiums, the sound barriers along the turnpike. But one of the things that I had advocated was for increased public safety egresses on and off the turnpike into Merrimack, specifically the north end of town over by where Webster Green is, opposite San Gobain. I had alluded to the Merrimack 360 project and had also brought up the thought of looking at a public safety egress down off of Milligan Parkway down where Campers Inn is located. So that was received by Commissioner Sheehan. So I'm hoping, and I don't know if it's possible during council's comments, if it's possible to have an agenda item put on in the near future where Kyle can maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the things we talked about and maybe give a big picture approach of what we have been working on as it relates to some of the traffic congestion that has plagued the Daniel Webster corridor. So I certainly want to thank Mr. Nowes for raising the comment and wanted to let the people know in the community that we are aware of it and that we have begun putting the ball rolling, so to speak, but I'm hoping we can get Director Fox in to make a more formal comment. Is that? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I want to just expound upon that a little bit because that is an ongoing conversation that we're planning to have with the governor and Commissioner Sheehan. It may be that the next time they'll come down here and actually get a bird's eye look at where Merrimack is traffic-wise. But the whole intent in setting that meeting up that Representative Hinch was instrumental in putting together was to be able to keep the governor and the commissioner both aware. And I know Rosemary Rung has also been trying to push that issue as well, to make sure that they're aware of what our situation is here in Merrimack. So there is a lot of things that are going on somewhat behind the scenes at the moment while we try to get all the big guns in the state aware and familiar with what's going on here and trying to work our way through what are the possibilities, what can we do. So there's future meetings expected to follow on from that.
Correct.
To continue that conversation. So,
and one of the things that was alluded to in that conversation, Mr. Chairman, was that it is anticipated that when the widening of the F.E. Everett is completed, that should ameliorate some of the traffic that's being deviated off of F.E. Everett onto Daniel Webster Highway. I certainly hope in the long picture that thinks that we can actually open up exit 12. I think that really is the linchpin, I think, in
It
my
would
opinion.
help. Commissioner Sheehan did point out that that was a complex enough problem that it would slow down the widening project to try and include that into it at this point. But that they could consider that as they're developing the widening and so not block off any potential changes. So,
I'm not proposing anything. They will propose. If we put a toll there, they could do it.
I'm sure, anyway, we're not even gonna,
Don't even go there.
I'm not going there.
Not gonna go there.
Anyway, so that is definitely something that they're considering because it was brought up and asked
Right.
for by representatives and staff and people. Eileen?
I wanted to make sure that I told Councilor Albert that we specifically spoke to the commissioner about, Commissioner Sheehan, about the sound barriers, and she's willing to come here and talk to us. They can't put up sound barriers because of the rules concerning there's very specific rules regarding decibels and that sort of thing. We talked about some type of barrier that she would be certainly willing to consider. And her sidekick said, well, who's going to pay for that? And she said, we were going to put in,
Chain link fence
put in
regardless.
chain link
Yeah.
fence anyway. So Kyle is looking at various kind of options, like maybe some kind of heavy-duty PVC, fencing type of thing that might help, while at the same time not be unsightly because nobody's maintaining a wood type of thing. So she's willing to come here and have that discussion.
And I appreciate that. I will stand by the fact that I think that if the commissioner lived in one of those neighborhoods, they'd have a real nice sound and sight barrier. I don't understand, a berm is a pile of dirt.
They're moving around anyway.
They're moving, all you gotta do is look at 93, and they're moving a lot around. So, but I do appreciate your efforts, Eileen, on that, thank you. And we'll wait and see, I guess, on that, so, thanks.
Okay. Any
Go ahead,
more
Lon.
comments? Pardon?
Go ahead, Lon.
I just have one other.
No.
Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm waiting for Lon.
Just recently, Lieutenant Jason Menard of the Worcester Fire Department passed away while trying to rescue an individual in a house fire. And in reading that very sad story, we take for granted every day we watch our firemen roll out of the fire station and the ambulance and so forth, and they respond to these calls. And rightfully so, they expect to go home every night. So that just brought it home to me that the effort these men and women put forward every day from our fire department and our EMTs and ambulance crews. So just wanted to recognize that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lon?
Happy Thanksgiving
Happy Thanksgiving.
To-
Happy Thanksgiving, Merrimack.
to council and to the residents. Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Lon, seconded by Barb. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Please turn off your mics.